Hi, my name is Rin. I'm a math nerd and I love God. If that's not your vibe, no worries. Keep scrolling. Have a great day. If it is your vibe, what's up? Um, so I just made a video talking about unique prime factorizations. Super fun. Uh, and it made me think of some stuff that sometimes I feel a lot like a prime number. Which if you don't remember the generally used definition of a prime number is um a number where it's only divisible by itself and 1. And that's because 1 is actually a unit in the set of integers. And so really the broader definition of a prime number is that it's divisible by itself and one of the units. And so since 1 is a unit and it's divided by itself, it's a prime number. Um, and sometimes I feel like that. I feel like sometimes I'm like the number 5, where 5 is just me and the Lord. And I'm super grateful that I get to be one with the Lord and that I'm trying my best to be one with the Lord. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. Um, but there are times where it feels like it's just me and him. And like I'm destined to be alone and all these things. And I don't think that that's true. But I recently just called off an engagement, and it was really exciting being engaged because I've always wanted to have a family and to be a mother and all these things, and I loved my fiance very much. Things didn't work out, and it is for the best that we're not together and we're not getting back together and all these things. But losing that, um, that was really hard, and now I'm in this position where it just feels like it's just me and God again. And that's great that I have God. But there are times where I'd like a partner, you know. Um, and there are times where I feel like a prime number where I'm like, it's just like the only one who gets me is God. And while that is true, I've learned a lot more about prime numbers, and it turns out that 5 isn't always a prime number. And similarly, I won't always be a single person. And I do like being single. I do enjoy it. I'm having fun. It's a good time in my life. I just hope it's not my entire life. But anyway, but even if it is, it's cool because I'm with God and it's all good. But turns out 5 is not always a prime number. Um, okay, this one's gonna be a little bit of a deep dive. We're gonna dive into some number theory for like a little bit, and then we'll go into how 5 is not always a prime number, but it typically is. But anyway, um, I'm trying to decide how nerdy to be. Full nerd. Okay, so there are different sets of numbers, and there are different like categories of numbers. The first numbers that we learn about as kids are what we call the counting number. Well, they're typically nicknamed like the counting numbers. So like you count one, two, three, blah 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 blah. Those are the counting numbers. Their actual name, they're the natural numbers. Um, and they get this fancy n value. And then when you go to school, you find out that we actually have a number for when you have nothing, and that's the number 0. So if you include the number 0, now we have all of these whole numbers. And then a little bit further on in school, you learn that we have ways of counting things that we don't even have, or things that we used to have but we're lacking, and that's negative numbers. So -1, -2, -3, blah 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 blah. And those, along with 0 and the natural numbers, those are what's called the integers, and they get this fancy Z. Integers only has one I. I don't know why I was trying to put 2 in there. But those are the integers, and then a little bit farther along in school, we find out that there's actually this whole other way category of numbers where we can break things down and we don't have to go in full number increments. We can use fractions, so like 1/2 or 3/4 or whatever. And these, another word for fraction is that it's a ratio. So these are rational numbers, ratio null numbers. But then if you have rational numbers, you also have irrational numbers, which rational is just, it's setting up a ratio of two numbers that are within the set of integers, but those aren't the only numbers out there. It's not the only number set. So we could also set up a ratio of numbers that aren't in the integers. So like the square root of 2 over 1. The square root of 2, that's not an integer. 1 is, but anyway, this is an irrational number. So it still has ratio, but it's irrational. It's over here. It's a whole other set of numbers. And then within that, these are all of the real numbers. And I just gotta erase this guy. So these are the real numbers. But then, that's not even all of the sets of numbers that we have available to us. Because then, if there are real numbers, are there numbers that aren't real? And yes, we call them imaginary numbers. Imaginary numbers. Which, the imaginary numbers are defined as, well, the first imaginary number is the square root of negative 1, which we call I. And any imaginary number that uses that, is the set of imaginary numbers. There's kind of like a child between these two, and that's the complex numbers, which gets this fancy little C. Complex numbers, they take a real part of a number, so that part's from the reals, and then they add in an imaginary part, and that part is from the imaginaries. And so then we have this whole other set of numbers that we're doing all these things with, and they all have different functions, they do different things, they're like imaginary numbers, well, really complex numbers, are used a lot in like electricity. Anyway, but like there are different categories for numbers for different uses and all these things. Now, none of these really touch on this idea of being prime and just being alone yet. But this semester I'm taking an advanced number theory class, and we've been delving into, so these are all of the like number worlds that I knew before this class. Going into this class, I found out that there's more. Which I feel like that's always happening. There's always more to learn. But anyway, there's also a set of numbers that, well, you could make any number set, but like you don't have to be restricted to the square root of negative 1. You could use the square root of negative 3, square root of negative 5, and then make their own number worlds, add in a real portion with them, and then we get different complex number worlds, and it keeps going forever and ever and ever, and we just have all of these number worlds and all the things, all the possibilities over and over and over again. Okay, so like there's a lot. There are so many sets of numbers, and you can just create a new set and play with it and all the things. It's super fun, and everyone should take an advanced number theory class because it's a good time. But it's within one of these worlds that 5 is not an imaginary number. And I'm pretty sure it's actually in the world where negative 1 is, the square root of negative 1 is the imaginary portion. Because if we say that the square root of negative 1, or we have I, I plus 2 times I, is it minus 2? Oh wait, no. I put the I in the wrong spot. If we do 1 plus 2i and 1 minus 2i, and then we multiply these together, so in the world where we're in the complex world, I believe it's the Gaussian integers when your imaginary portion is the square root of 1. But anyway, in the Gaussian world, 5 is not prime number. It's still, the Lord is still there, but 5 now has a partner. And I don't know. I just feel like this was a lesson that I needed, as a reminder that even though I'm so used to just seeing my life as it has been, where it's just me and God and we're just trying our best, and relationships have fallen through and that's hard, and like I want a family, but I'm not there yet, and I'm stuck in what I'm used to and all the things that I'm aware of, and the things that make sense to me, even though some of it still doesn't make sense. I'm still, how the heck? And then you throw in like pi and e and what? Um, I'm here in my understanding. This part makes sense. This part kind of makes sense, and then we get over here and it's crazy. But this part, I just believe that God knows everything. And so eventually, I will find a partner. And with God, it'll be good. And the scripture that um I thought of for this topic, I guess, is JST is Joseph Smith translation. So Joseph Smith translation of Matthew verse 7, verses 12 through 17. And it says, "Say unto them, ask of God, ask, and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and unto him that knocketh it shall be opened." And I don't know, I guess I'm grateful that God gets all of this, and like I only get part of it, and yet there's so much more. And with him, whatever you're looking for me, it's eventually a future family and also a job and a career, and I'm looking for lots of things. But as I ask God, um, even knowing that I only understand this much, if I ask God, He knows so much more. And if I ask, I shall find. And I'm just so grateful. I know it's not going to look the way that I think it will, um, but it'll look pretty cool. And I'm just grateful for God. And yeah, so keep asking God, keep seeking, and you shall find too. So, anyway, have a happy Sunday. Bye.